Hi everyone, it's Jen from Jen's Junk Journal Gems. I finished the cover and I do have a video of how I've done the cover here. I've repurposed an old book cover. I do have a video of that and how I have done it, and I also have a video on how I've reinforced the spine here. So just check my channel for those. But today, I think because I've got the cover done, I'm going to start working on my signatures. I have seen YouTube videos where people do the covers last. They work on all of the signatures and then create a cover. I don't do it that way, just personal preference. I like to have my cover done. It gives me a little bit of some motivation and inspiration, I guess you could say. This is going to be a nature journal. So what I've done is I have grabbed some cardstock, and I believe that this is from I don't know whether or not it's from Michaels or from a Tim Holtz paper pad. I'm not sure, but I have trimmed it down. What I did was I measured from just where the cover ends to about, oh, and again, my measurements, terrible. I don't know how to read a ruler properly, but it's 3 ticks. If that makes sense. So I want the papers to have a little bit of room, in between where they end and the cover begins. And I also want to leave this about the same amount of space on the top and the bottom. So I'm not 100% fussy on measuring here. I do eyeball a lot of things, but what I did was I cut this down. And when you lay it down like that, hopefully you can see, that to me is the perfect size going from the spine. It's leaving some room here, leaving some room here, and leaving some room again at the bottom. What you'll find is when you start adding, this is going to be the outer cover of my first signature. And what you'll find is when you start adding papers, the papers may in fact go beyond the end of this folded paper here. And that's okay. Unless you want precise evenness, you can always trim down your papers. But keep in mind, and this is really important, and I have to remind myself of this often, it's a junk journal. It's not a mass-produced book where you're going to have everything perfectly straight. You're creating a handmade journal, and it's okay if it's not 100% perfection. So, having said that, I folded up some papers already. What I like to do, and I haven't, I've made about half a dozen journals thus far. So by all means, I'm not a pro like you could find on YouTube, Nick the Booksmith or Izzy B. Craft Creations or Jibbid Neary. Those are the 3 that I follow the most. What I do is I try and have the cover match the size of the signatures using the standard, and I don't know if it's, I think it's called A4, I'm not sure, but it's 8.5 by 11. This is a standard sheet of paper, and you can always trim it down. I have made mini junk journals before and done this, but I, for the most part, want to use just a standard regular size paper. So I'll give you an example of what I'm trying to explain to you here. I've got this cover. Let me move this out of the way. I've got this cover here that I would like to one day use for a junk journal. This is, like I said, the standard size paper. If I add it to this journal, you can see, I mean, it's just nowhere near the size of the cover. I would have to figure out how to include papers that will be big enough. I have not looked in Staples. We have Staples here in Canada. I don't know if it's in the US or the UK, but I would have to look in Staples to see if in fact there are larger sheets and pads of paper to do that. So anyway, I'm not there yet. I haven't learned how to, you know, accommodate a very large cover like that. And therefore, when I do choose to repurpose book covers for my junk journals, I try and keep to the same size so that I know that my signatures will be easier to compose because I'm using the standard sheets of paper. Hope that was clear. And again, you know, like I'm still learning, you know, how to do this stuff. So I'm, you know, I'm a beginner. I just thought that I would create a YouTube channel to show you sometimes, you know, the thought processes that I go through when creating junk journals, and hopefully it does help you. Please leave any questions or comments in the comments section below this video and let me know your thoughts if these are helpful to you. Okay, so I've gone ahead and in no particular order, I may in fact redo some of these. Let me see here, hold on. I've mixed up some of these papers here. All right. So I've just gone ahead and I've used paper that I already have. This actually was a botched printing job from a digital kit that I purchased. But you know what? I like that image, so we're going to use it. And I've got this. This is another digital kit that I used. And I download my video or my digital kits from Etsy. There's tons and tons of digital kits. All you have to do is do a search on Etsy, the theme that you want, you know, nature digital kits for journals, and you'll find all kinds of stuff. So that's what I have so far. Now, I know that people have asked, you know, how thick do I do my signatures and how many should I include in a junk journal? This is totally a personal decision. There's no set amount of papers that's right or wrong to include in a signature. Some people would be happy just with that amount in one signature and, you know, attach maybe 5 or 6 signatures. What I like to do is I like to have, and what I've done so far is 3 signatures with, I don't know, maybe 15 folded sheets, something like that. Don't forget that the thickness here, if I were to leave the signature as is, this is actually going to get wider as I attach things to my papers, pockets, tags, images. You're layering these blank canvases for your creative ideas. So keep that in mind too. Also, I have seen people on that have YouTube channels that tend to do signatures, if they're doing 3 signatures, doing them all together and having kind of like a repetition of, you know, 3 of everything if they were doing, you know, 3 signatures. So they would have 3 of this, you know, this paper. They would have 3 of these, and they just, I mean, it's obviously a speedier process. It takes much less time to put your signatures together. But what I find is that I really enjoy the creative process, and I don't like to repeat what I'm putting into my signatures for each signature. So I want each signature to be very unique. So I've got tea stained paper, regular paper. Again, this is from a digital kit that I got on Etsy. And I've printed them off on both white sheets and tea stained paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim around this edge here. And I do have a paper trimmer, but as I have said in previous videos, I don't know if it's because of maybe the brand that I have. I don't want to flog the brand because, you know, it could just be me. But I find that my paper cutter isn't as accurate as good old-fashioned scissor work. So that's why I'm scissoring these. Sometimes I do have an arthritis disease, and so sometimes it's easier for me to use my paper trimmer. I'm just going to fold this in half rather than using the scissors, because it obviously is easier on my hands. And what I do is with each paper that I'm adding here, I'm going to just tuck them in, and I can always rearrange them because obviously they're not sewn. Now, as you can see too, this is a good example. This sheet that I just cut, it's not the same size as, you know, most, if not all, of my other sheets that I've added so far. And that's okay. Junk journals, you can actually have just a strip of, let me see if I can find one. You can have a partial script, a partial piece of something that you've already used for something else. This isn't the greatest example, but I've got that trimmed from something else. So just as an example here. And you can score these, but I'm using my hands. Even if you were to tuck that in and just have it random like that, as long as it's in an area, if you are attaching a smaller piece like this from a book or from wherever, make sure that it's, when you go to sew this signature onto the material that you're using, that the needle will in fact be going through one point here. So I like to use a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. So I know based on just, you know, my experience, the hole is going to be somewhere here, and somewhere here. So if I were to add this, say, to the top, I'm not going to be able to secure it at all because the holes that I make for my pamphlet stitch will in fact you know, miss this piece completely. So when you're finished doing your signatures and you're ready to sew them into the spine, it's often good, it's a good practice to actually go through, flipped, make sure that you're making the adjustments, you know, necessary. And because I have papers that, you know, aren't easily lined up just, you know, by going like this kind of thing. You know, you have a look and make sure that you're doing any adjustments before you, you know, sew them in. Anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of these papers. And what I'll probably do once I finish adding them to the signatures is I'm going to spend a day. I've already got these made up. They're duplicates of another journal that I was making and I didn't end up using. So I've got a couple of envelopes here, and I've got a tag, and I've got this tag here. I've already completed. So what I'll do is once I finish, as I said, adding my papers and I'm happy with the amount of papers that are in there, I'm going to spend, you know, a day or two just making tags and pockets and envelopes and that kind of thing. And once I do that, then I'll be able to go back into my signature and figure out where to put them all. So it's a hugely creative and very personal process. I hope that some of the things that I've mentioned to you today have been helpful. If you have any questions or concerns or even suggestions, I'm open to those as well. Please leave a comment below. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I will be doing further tutorials and flip throughs as I complete my journals. All right, everyone, take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.